Welcome friends to another r/prorevenge video. If you want to join me in getting revenge against the YouTube algorithm, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And our first story of the day is by CMSRN. Cheating student thought he had me fooled. Fell right into my trap. So I'm a cancer researcher and a guest professor at a university school of medicine, teaching my specialty, imaging. Besides the usual acquisitions of medical images using MRI, CT, etc., imaging has a lot to do with image processing. Some days I'm just a glorified programmer/IT guy. And as anyone who's ever programmed anything will tell you, coding is a very personal activity. With enough experience, you can tell who wrote what just by looking at the lines. I'm also in my late 20s and I'm not native to this country, and it's my first year as a guest professor. So some students look at me as this inexperienced, gullible foreign guy. As part of my module's grading, the students have to submit 2 reports that weigh 10% each of their final grade. These reports are about image processing and they have to code a fair bit. As usual, there's students that make an effort. Some do minimal work and then some cheat and copy. As I was grading the reports, I noticed a small group of students who found reports from previous years online and literally copied and pasted those reports, changing only their name. It was a facepalm moment because those reports weren't even good and had a lot of errors. You see, in order to establish a baseline for my grading, I browsed previous year's reports so I knew what to expect from the students of this module. Naturally, I graded them all with 0 and kept working my way through grading the reports I had left. Meanwhile, the students casually asked me in the halls how were the reports. Of course, I can't comment on that until I release the grades. One time, this dude, who had copied another report, 98% match on plagiarism checker, asks me when I will release the grades and comes with this story that he worked really hard on his reports. That his exam hadn't gone so well and he's hoping that the grade on his reports are enough to get a pass. I mean, submitting another person's work as your own's very wrong, but it was an online submission and impersonal. Right now, he was just lying through his teeth and to my face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't lose composure and decided to come up with a plan. I knew that my exam was the last exam of the semester and that after that, the students usually go home or family vacations while they wait for their grades to be posted online. So I graded the exams and input their grades into my Excel with their report grades. 4 students had 0 due to cheating on their reports, and if I graded their reports with 50% of the max grade, they would barely fail the module, but they would fail nonetheless. So it was on. In order to be fair, I bumped everyone else's grades. A bunch of people with miserable reports ended up barely passing because of my grade bump. But even though their reports were bad, it was their own work and not copied from anywhere. You see, students are entitled to make an appointment to review their grades after publishing and before the grades are locked for the year. Basically, they sit with me, we go through their exam and reports, and their goal is to convince me to give them extra points in hopes that they pass the module. I knew the cheaters would come. After all, they think they fooled me once already, and they still have half the report's points to bargain for. So I just waited for their emails. Lo and behold, they write me the same day the grades go online, saying how hard they worked on their reports and that they don't understand how they only got 50% and that they wanted an appointment. I was ecstatic. Sure, let's review your grades. Do you remember that my exam was the last one? Well, they were already on vacations, some very far away, and begged me for an online appointment. No can do. University policy. So here they come, cutting their vacations short and catching planes. Some spent hours in buses and trains to make it on time. I know what many of you are thinking. They come, I show them the plagiarism checker results and reveal that I know it's not their work, and send them on their way. Well, I considered it, but I had something better in mind. Those appointments usually take 10 minutes. I show them their work with my notes on what's wrong and right, and they try to find some inconsistencies in my grading and bargain for more points. I ain't giving you the opportunity. Mwahaha. So one by one, they sit with me individually, and I go through their exam and reports. Remember that they copied the reports? And copied bad ones with lots of errors? I ask questions, lots of them. Why did you do this? What's your reasoning for this? They don't know. It's not their work. They mumble random stuff because they don't know what to answer. Point by point, mistake by mistake, I explain why it's wrong, how it should have been done, lecturing the same material that they had already been lectured on during class. I make it long, I make it boring, I make it painful. I spent hours with each one of them throughout those 3 days. They always come with the same, "I worked so hard on this," and a little smirk on their face because they thought it should be really easy to fool me. The gullible foreign again. As the hours go by and I'm walking through the errors one by one, I could see their expression change. Little by little, their hopes of passing being slowly crushed. And when they realized that I knew they cheated and I wasn't going to give up any extra points. At this point, they tried to cut their appointment short and leave, and I wouldn't let them. "We need to finish the review of your grades, it's a university policy." And I just kept going, extending their misery for an hour or more. It was legal torture, plain and simple. It was glorious. At the end, every single one of them left with a crushed soul look in their eyes and a fail in my class. They knew that I caught them, that I baited them, and they fell for it. They ruined their vacation and their family vacations, spent money to travel back and forth, wasted precious summertime, got bored to death, and have nothing to show for it. And next year, they'll have to repeat the module with me. I hope you enjoy your summer. See you next year. If you had failed a class and you knew that next year you would have to have the same class with the same teacher, would that be like the worst thing in the world to you? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Silverwolf. That time I accidentally worked for the Russian mafia and proxy blew up a dumpster with bread dough. I'm a professional baker and have worked for various companies developing recipes and the like. I found a job at a local grocery store, working super early mornings on their pastries for the day. There were usually a few other people there, one of whom was a mixer. Mixers typically follow a spec sheet with the weights of all the ingredients they need to batch mix. It's kind of mindless work and doesn't require much thought. He was a young guy, fresh out of his teens. We became fast coworker friends and enjoyed chatting it up about baking, and I'd help him put our supply order away. Good times. One day, a woman with a thick Russian accent came in and handed us business cards. She told us whatever we're getting paid, her company would double it if we came to work with them. I scheduled an interview, thinking this would be a great opportunity for me. It was a new grocery store concept, like a glitzy, glammy, European-style Costco, whatever that means. When I went in for the interview, the place was literally still under construction. I met their lead baker and we hit it off right away. He warned me that the big boss had interesting tastes, and we'd need to work with that. No biggie, more money, let's go. They hired us both, and over the next several months, it was a really interesting and fun experience. The big boss, thick, burly Russian man to the point and perpetually angry, wanted this place to be like Costco, mass production of quality pastries. They were bringing in crazy amounts of new equipment, including folders, shapers, and injectors that were easily worth millions. We didn't have much equipment to start, and we were doing a lot of mixing in trash cans. Remember my mixer buddy? Well, he was working on the bread dough using spec sheets provided by our lead baker. Over time, they were bringing on more staff, and it was a lot of fun developing new recipes, experimenting with ratios, and figuring out how to get over constraints for the types of products the boss wanted. Did I mention he was a jerk? Oh yeah, when he was reviewing some cheesecake I'd made, he said, "Good job, sweetie." I came back with "Miss, ma'am," or "My name is fine." He scowled at me, and from that point on, he treated me like garbage. We brought other women on staff. I watched him hit on them. Some of the others were cool with being sexually harassed, I guess. This place was paying top dollar, and you had to get in good with the big boss, right? So the stage is set here. Boss quickly turned his business into a game of Survivor. He'd fire the people on the spot for whatever reason. One day, one of the people he sacked was our lead baker. It came as a surprise since he was developing all the recipes we'd been using. I inherited a lot of his notes, and his development work was divided between me and the mixer. So this whole time, Mixer was kissing Big Boss's butt pretty hard. He was seeing an open position with the lead baker gone, and quickly became invested in the idea of him running the bakery show and making some serious money. At the same time, my relationship with Big Boss was quickly declining. For an example, I had him sample some cinnamon rolls I'd made, and he came back with, "I hate these, they're terrible." "What do you not like? We can change anything about them. The dough, the filling, the icing?" "I don't know, I just don't like them." On a hunch, I gave some cinnamon rolls from the same batch to another lady there he had eyes for and asked her if she'd present them to him as her own. She offered him the same product I'd given him minutes before, and he loved it. Anyway, I noticed that my notes were out of place one day, and a coworker informed me my mixer buddy was stealing my work and presenting it as his own. He was also approaching me and asking a lot of baking questions, which was fine, but I knew that his knowledge of industrial ratio baking was mediocre at best. He was a mixer. Following a recipe's all he knew how to do. Knowing this, I made a decoy copy of my notes, but this time I put really awful recipes with huge amounts of salt or yeast. Anyone who knew how to build a recipe could probably look at it and go, "Whoa, that's a lot." Not Mixer Buddy. My original plan was to leave this in an obvious spot as bait and let him steal the awful recipes, but Big Boss had other plans. We sat down for a pre-launch meeting and he informed me that I wasn't going to be working in the bakery anymore and was being relegated to store setup. Mixer was going to be taking over as the lead baker, guessing all that butt kissing really paid off, and I was to give him all my notes so far. No problem, boss. A day later was when the fun really began. Mixer mixed up a huge batch of super butt salty cake batter, and I heard Big Boss screaming at him about way too much salt. That's not even where the fun begins. As we were setting up an industrial quantity baking equipment, we had to test the larger quantity mixing machines and did a test run for some bread dough with my decoy recipe that had triple the yeast and sugar. As it didn't come out right, Mixer had to throw it away. His choice, the dumpster out back in the dead heat of summer. Hundreds of pounds of dough. The fun thing about massive amounts of bread dough is that it doesn't magically stop rising if you throw it away, especially in a hot dumpster. A few hours later, I spied out back to see Mixer Buddy shoveling this massive blob of dough into trash bags that had exploded from the dumpster like an uncovered blender spewing out a yeast-laden smoothie. Sweet revenge. Now, about the mafia thing. This store was really strange. They'd been ordering doubles of all the crazy industrial baking equipment and storing them in the back. We had nowhere to put any of this. I also looked up the company they were subcontracted under, and it was to a dead address in Russia. Big Boss also had armed security guards everywhere. This was a grocery store, mind you. I had a feeling that this company was more of a front for laundering a bunch of money. I was eventually fired by Big Boss, which was great because I'd been job hunting, full well knowing this business was a sinking ship. I had a new job lined up already. They had their grand opening, did business for 3 months, then closed. Rest in peace, Mixer. Yeah, the whole thing seems kind of sketchy. Some random guy paying you well over what's normal rate for a job like you're having in a grocery store, and wanting to go directly in competition with Costco? I don't really think any of that sounds very logical. Not to mention how sketchy it is that you found out the address is a dead address in Russia. There's just red flags all over the place. And our final story of the day is by Nodak Girl. Get mad when my apple tree doesn't produce enough apples? Get ready to be big mad. In 2018, my husband and I bought my parents' house as our first home. Our very large yard came with 2 mature producing apple trees and 1 crabapple tree. Since my parents moved out in 2006, an older gentleman had come by and picked the apples out of their tree to use as deer feed during hunting season. She told me as such and said he usually stopped by late summer to re-get permission for the year and check on the harvest. 2018 and 2019, it was great. He picked the apples on the tree and on the ground in a few hours and away they'd go. 2020 rolls around, our trees produced 1 apple on one and no more than 2 dozen on the other. My next door neighbors, good friends, asked to have what was up there to make some pies. So obviously I let them have them. Old dude rolls up in July on his John Deere lawn tractor and asks what happened to all of his apples. When I told him they just didn't produce this year, he went off. Went on about that's how he makes his fun money in the fall by selling jams, pies, etc. at local farmers markets, and it's my fault he lost his income and blah blah blah. When I mentioned I was told he used the apples for hunting, he sputtered some more, shook his fist and drove off. So this spring, I cut down those freaking apple trees. Sucks to suck, jerk. I mean, I guess if you're not actually wanting the apples yourself, it's not the worst thing to cut down the tree, but I feel like in any scenario, you didn't have to cut the trees down. I guess just not having trees is the easiest way to deal with this guy, but he only comes by once a year. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.